So in the last talk, we were discussing about the sitting posture. So according to the Buddha's instruction, right? So uh, Nisidati, Palangkam Abhujitua, Ujung Kaya Panidhaya. So it's the yogis sit down, crosses his legs, and then with deliberate intention, keep his body upright. So keep the body upright, upright but comfortable. Mm. So that means you must keep the backbone, as we discussed, the spine in its natural alignment. Okay? It's relaxed and comfortable. I think it's okay. Yeah. At times like this, you wish you have the voice like the Buddha. Buddha don't need to use a mic. His voice can extend as far as his audience is. Mm, mm. So anyway, so we sit down in an upright position, but comfortable. Okay. Mm. So and also not just sit upright, but to sit still, okay, without moving. And that's why we need a comfortable posture. Okay? Only if the body is comfortable, you can remain still without moving. Yeah? So if your body is uncomfortable, uh, you adopt a posture that is not comfortable, you keep shifting about and you cannot remain still. Yeah? And it's important to keep the body still during sitting meditation, because a body that is still, not moving, is conducive to development of samadhi. Okay, so if your body keeps shifting about, your mind is also distracted by this constant movement. Then it cannot sink easily into samadhi. Mhm. So keeping the body still also helps us to uh, discern clearly nature of dukkha in the body. It brings out, uh, like keeping the body still, it brings out clearly the nature of dukkha in the body. Okay? So when you're not meditating, when you're not in a retreat outside of the meditation center, you're doing a lot of activities the whole day through. Your body is in constant motion. Okay? So when your body is in constant motion, you cannot discern clearly. The nature of dukkha in the body is hidden away, covered up by the constant motion. Okay? But when we meditate, we train the body to remain still. And after a while, the nature of dukkha in the body appear clearly. Okay? And then you can discern it clearly. Mm, mm, mm. So sit upright in a comfortable position, sit still, uh, and also close your eyes in order to prevent any distraction from outside. Mm, mm. And then parimukkhang sati upatapetua. That means, so after you're seated down, cross your leg, hold the body upright, hold the body still, close your eyes. Then you establish mindfulness to be face to face with the object. Okay? So here your object is rising, falling. Okay? So rising occur, the mindfulness must be face to face with rising. falling occur, mm, mindfulness must be face to face with falling. Similarly, other objects. Thinking occur, you're not thinking, the mindfulness must be face to face with the mental state of thinking. In noting pain, the mindfulness must be face to face with the pain, and so on. So this instruction to establish mindfulness, to be face to face with the object. This implies that when we meditate, we need to have an object. Okay? We need to have a primary object for the mindfulness to be established on. Okay? Otherwise, how to carry out this instruction? To be face to face with the object. Uh, uh, So we need to have a primary object. Okay? So, so this primary object is necessary in order to develop sati and samadhi effectively. Okay? So the primary object serves as a place to anchor our noting mind on, so that the mindfulness can develop continuously by noting it, meditating on it. Okay? So without this primary object to anchor the noting mind, then what happens? You don't have a primary object in your practice. Then usually what the yogi end up doing is they note when they can find an object. When they cannot find an object, they do not know. So then the noting will be a little bit here, a little bit there. And sometimes they are noting, sometimes they are not noting. So that means the mindful noting, the work of mindful noting, the work of meditation is not continuous. And so if this is so, then the sati, samadhi, mindfulness, and concentration will be slow to develop. Mm, mm. So when you meditate, you must have a primary object. Okay? You must choose a primary object. So as for choosing a primary object, so a primary object, it must not be too many objects. Okay? So too many objects in the beginning of your practice, when the uh, mindfulness, the concentration is not yet sufficiently developed, your noting mind will not be able to handle too many objects. You try to note too many objects, you end up either restless or with tension. Okay. So, for example, some yogis they may have heard that in vipassana meditation, you note all the experiences arising at the six sense doors. Okay. So straight away, when they start to practice, they try to note every single experience arising in every single sense doors. Okay. So, but when your mindfulness and concentration are not yet developed, you'll be unable to handle all these objects. Okay. So you must limit down the number of objects. Okay. In order to develop mindfulness and concentration first. You must limit down the number of objects. Okay? So then the primary object also must be simple object. Object that's easy for the mind to discern. Yeah? This would usually be object connected with the gross physical body. Mm. So the object must not be too many objects. It must be simple and easy for the mind to discern in order for mindfulness and concentration to develop effectively. Mm. For sitting meditation, yeah, um, Mahasi Sayadaw recommended rising, falling as the primary object. Mm, mm. So this is a suitable primary object because it's not too many objects. Mm. Rising, falling, only two things. Rising and falling, only two things, not too many. Mm. And it's also simple. Mm. Yeah, just rising and falling is as simple as it can get. Nothing complicated about it. Yeah, just rising and falling. Even a small child can understand this. Okay? Mm. And it's also easy to discern because it covers a big area and it's gross. Uh, So when you compare this to, let's say, the breathing, anapana, right? Breathing is just at this one small, tiny little spot. Uh, so, which one will be easier to discern? Hmm? Mm, So this tiny little spot is like, let's say, a mouse, small little mouse. Huh? Rising, falling covers such a big area. It's like a big elephant. So, which one easier to catch? Huh? A tiny mouse or a giant elephant? Mm. So, mm, so it's rising, falling is a suitable object, yeah, for this reason. Okay? It's not too many objects. It's simple. It's easy to discern. Mm, mm, mm. So, what is this rising, falling? So, it is the sensation of movement, huh? Sensation of physical movement connected with natural breathing. Right? So, when we breathe in and breathe out naturally, mm, so when we breathe in naturally, naturally there will be this sensation of upward movement uh, in the body. Yeah, when we breathe out also, naturally there will be this sensation of downward movement in the body. Okay? So rising, falling is this sensation of movement connected with the in and out breath. Okay? Mm. Now, in the original instruction from Mahasi Sayadaw, he talked about rising, falling of the abdomen. Mm. Mm. So, but sometimes for some yogis, this can be a bit problematic. Mm. So, because they cannot find the rising, falling in the abdomen. Okay? Mm. So, because not everybody breathe from the abdomen. Mm. Uh, Most people today, uh, modern world, which is very stressful, tend to breathe from the chest. Mm, mm, mm. So I read an article before, and that when you feel stressed up, uh, you're breathing, you tend to breathe from the chest. So, mm, mm. So, but when you're very relaxed, very calm, very peaceful, very relaxed, then you tend to breathe from the abdomen. mm. Just like a baby. You observe a baby. When baby is lying down, asleep. It's very calm, very relaxed. You observe it's breathing from the abdomen naturally. Right? Mm. So, but in our world today, where there's so much stress, a lot of people tend to breathe from the chest. Mm. So to ask them to note the rising falling on the abdomen, specifically on the abdomen, will be problematic because it's simply not there. Okay? So you cannot ask them to note something that is simply not there. Right? So therefore, so what I usually instruct the yogis is to note rising falling wherever it occurs. Okay, so you feel the natural movement, as long as it's the natural movement connected with the natural breathing. Okay? So if you feel the movement in the abdomen, well and good. Okay, but if you feel it, you can't feel it on the abdomen, but you feel it on the chest instead, then you note the rising falling there. Okay, or wherever you can feel the sensation of rising, falling. Okay? Mm. Yeah. But this sensation is on the torso. Okay? Mm. So it's not in the head. Some yogis say not rising, falling in the head. No, that's wrong. Okay? That is something else. Mm. 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 So you know the rising, falling wherever it occurs. Okay? Mm. So as soon as the movement occur, say as soon as the rising occur, so your attention must immediately be with the rising that is occurring. Okay? So as soon as the rising occur, immediately you must direct awareness to the rising movement. Okay? And direct your awareness there and connect with it precisely. Okay? Mm. So, in doing so, uh, don't force the mind on the object. Okay? So, just direct your awareness there and allow the mind, the awareness uh, to ease into the object. Okay? Relax and ease into the object. And then flow with the movement of the rising, right? Continuously from beginning to the end of the rising. Okay? Mm. So, so the noting mind must be concurrent, must be synchronized with the object, with the rising movement. Okay? So as soon as the rising occur, immediately the noting must be with the movement. Okay? Uh, so, but the rising is not static, right? It keeps going, right? It keeps moving. Okay? So the noting mind must keep track of it. Okay? It must be together all the time. So as soon as it occurs, the noting must be together. And when it moves again, the noting mind must move together. It must always be together, 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 continuously, from beginning to the end. Okay? Perfectly synchronized. Okay? Mm. So similarly, with the rising movement that occur next, so as soon as the falling occur, immediately, the awareness and the noting mind must be together with the falling, and it must be together with it continuously, from beginning to the end, moment to moment to moment, from beginning to the end, it must keep that. uh, mm. To help sustain the continuity of the noting. So, because in the beginning of your practice, when the mindfulness and concentration is still insufficiently developed, you find that noting will not be continuous despite your effort. Not a few times you wander away. And you come back, a few times again in wanders away. Okay, so to help to sustain the continuity of the noting, okay? So you can make use of the labeling. Okay? So that means you put a label on the object that you're noting, okay? A mental label. Okay? So for example, uh, when noting rising, falling, so when noting rising, okay? So when rising occur, you turn your attention to the rising and you notice the rising. You take note of it. Okay. That taking note of the rising, that's called noting. Okay. But as you take note of the rising, okay, you apply a mental label on the experience of rising. You put a label rising, rising, rising. So that is called labeling. Yeah, putting a label on it. So there are two things here. Okay? One is noting. Okay? Noting means you're taking note properly, carefully of the object. Mm. So then there's labeling. Labeling is just simply putting a label uh, on that experience, on the object that you are noting. Mm. So now labeling, this label, it helps to point the mind directly to the object. We kind of give the mind a direction in the noting. Mm. It also serves as a reminder to the noting mind not to forget to note. Okay? So this will help to sustain the continuity of noting. Okay? Mm. Mm. But the emphasis must be on the noting, okay, and not the labeling. Mm. So labeling should be just support uh, for the noting. Okay? The main work of meditation. Meditation is actually noting, not labeling. Okay, so you must emphasize the noting. Okay, then only you're meditating. Okay, if you emphasize the labeling, some yogis they end up doing just labeling. And they just putting a label, rising, falling. Because they don't emphasize on noting, they are not taking note of the object properly. They're just labeling. Mm. Then they are not meditating effectively. Okay. Mm. Yeah. So this labeling can be used not just for the note rising and falling. It can be used to note for the noting of any other objects. Okay. Even later on, we'll talk about noting of sitting and touching. uh, then there's also noting a secondary object, pain, thinking, and so on. Okay. So with all these objects, you can also use the label. Okay. When you're not thinking, you can put the label thinking. And when you're not pain, you can just put the label pain. In a walking meditation also, when you're noting the process of lifting, you can put the label lifting. uh, So you can use it for the noting of uh, to help with the noting of any objects. Mm, mm, mm. Okay, so first, make make effort to follow with mindfulness. Follow each rising, each falling movement from beginning to the end. Okay. Mm. So the rising occur, you make effort, follow it from beginning to the end. Falling occur, you make effort, follow it from beginning to the end. each rising, each falling. You must make effort, yeah, to follow continuously from beginning to the end. Yeah. Yeah, to exert the mindfulness, yeah, to be continuously aware. Yeah. Put effort, put energy into the noting, yeah, to drive it continuously to note, yeah, each rising, each falling from beginning to the end. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So you make effort in this way. After some time, you find that you're able to follow, uh, each rising and each falling, uh, reasonably well, uh, from beginning to the end. Okay? Mm. So once you can follow, then you make effort. Every time you note each rising, each falling, you make effort further to feel, uh, and to take note, uh, of the physical sensations, connected with each rising and falling movement. Okay. So, for example, in noting rising, you make effort to discern, what are the sensations present. So, for example, I may be rising, maybe tightness, maybe tension, maybe pushing, uh, and so on. Okay? Noting falling, you observe carefully, you may notice a sensation of, uh, relaxing, loosening, softening, and so on. Okay? So you make effort to note whatever sensation is present, with each rising, with each falling from its beginning to the end. Okay? So first you make effort to follow. uh, Once you can follow, then you make effort discern, to feel and discern clearly the sensation, connected with the movement. Mm. So as much as possible, uh, you must stay with the noting of the primary object, yeah, the rising and falling. So, mm, do not go and note other object unnecessarily. Okay? So there'll be other objects, that arise, even as you are noting, rising and falling. But you only note, this other object, if they are prominent. That means they're strong enough, that they distract your attention away, pull your attention away from the rising falling. Then only, uh, you turn your attention to note, these other objects. Mm. Otherwise, if they are very mild objects, they do not distract your attention, they do not pull your attention away from the rising, falling, then you don't note them. You stay with the noting of rising, falling continuously. Okay? So rising, falling is your primary object. So that means it's the main object, that you use mind in order to develop, sati samadhi, develop mindfulness and concentration. Mm. In order to develop mindfulness and concentration, the noting mind must remain on the primary object most of the time. Okay? So, in order to develop mindfulness and concentration effectively and quickly, uh, so the noting mind must remain most of the time, with the primary object. Mm. Mm. So later on, once the mindfulness and concentration has been sufficiently developed, then, naturally, you will to take on more and more objects beyond the primary object. Okay? But for now, your noting should stay mostly with the primary object, with the rising and falling. Mm. Mm. Also, when you note an object, so must note the object, you must note each object, okay, with wholehearted attention, okay, complete full attention to the object. That means 100% attention, okay? Uh, okay, so nothing less, okay? Not even 99%. 99% is too little. It must be 100%. Mm. So, for example, if you're noting rising, yeah, all my must be completely be just with the rising and nothing else. Okay. Mm. And next, when falling occur, you're noting the falling, your whole mind must be completely be just with the falling movement and nothing else. Okay. Mm. So, mm. So when you note, for example, not rising, so you must not note rising, but at the same time, part of your attention is on, for example, let's say the sound outside. Yeah, nothing rising, but at the same time, you're listening to the sound outside, being aware of the sound outside. Yeah. Then in this case, your attention is not fully, with the experience of rising in the present moment. Okay? Mm. Another example, let's say after you noted the rising, then when falling is occurring, then you note the falling, your attention must be completely with the falling. Yeah. You must not note the falling, but at the same time still thinking about the rising that has just disappeared. Okay? You must be completely just be with the falling movement. Okay? Mm. Also, when you're noting secondary object, so later we'll talk about secondary object. uh, Maybe in the next. mm. So when you note secondary object, like pain, sensation in the body, thinking, and so on. Okay? So, so when you note this object, you must turn your whole attention to note the secondary object. Leave behind the primary object completely. Okay? You must not try to, note the secondary object, but at the same time still trying to hold on to the primary object. Okay? So if you do so, uh, your attention, your awareness will be split. uh, your mind will be dispersed in different direction. Okay? And then mindfulness and concentration cannot develop effectively. Okay? Mm. So you must meditate on each object occurring in each moment with the whole mind uh, completely uh, on the object. Okay? Full mind that is full mindfulness. Okay? Mm. So, mm, so this way of noting also implies that mm, one noting one object. Okay, you don't try to note in such a way, one noting various objects. Okay? One noting one object. Okay? Mhm. So you want to note another object, you have to turn your attention completely to that object and note. Okay? Don't try to note this object and that object at the same time. Okay? One noting one object. But different moment is different noting. Different moment can be different object. But each moment one noting only one object. Okay? Not more than that. Mm. Mm. So as you're noting rising, falling, so various other objects may arise, as we said just now. So you ignore uh, if those objects does not attract the attention of the mind, it does not pull the attention away, you ignore them. You remain with the rising falling. Okay? But if they do distract your attention, they do pull your attention away from the rising falling, then only you turn your attention to them and note them. So these are what we call the secondary objects. So secondary objects means any other objects other than the primary object that are prominent enough to pull your attention away uh, from the primary object. So we'll talk more about the noting of the secondary object in the coming talk here today. Sa, sa, sa. Any questions? Anything you're not clear about? Mm, Everything clear?
Yes.
Mm, Okay. Let me stop here today.